There are a lot of benefits that come from buying a used bike, but there are a lot of pitfalls and opportunities for things to go wrong. So the first step we need to take is, if we want to win at buying a used bike, is to figure out which ones we want. Narrow it down to 2 or 3 bikes, and then become an expert on each of these models. I typically start researching the bikes I'm interested in as much as 2 months ahead of time. This is going to be critical for knowing when you found a good deal. I'll tell you the truth, I don't really like buying used bikes. They tend to come with surprises, and I'm more interested in riding than fixing the previous owner's upgrades. So my advice to you is, when buying used, look for every excuse not to buy the bike. That's right, go in assuming the worst. Would you trust any random dude on the street to perform complex service on your current motorcycle? No, neither would I. Buying a used bike, that's exactly what we are walking into. So when shopping, I want a bike that is as close to completely untouched, bone stock as I can find. I don't want one with loads of upgrades, not even an exhaust system. Unless we have credible documentation saying otherwise, we need to assume that no services have been done, the valves haven't been adjusted, and it needs an oil change. The long-standing rule of thumb is to change the coolant every 2 years, change the fork oil every 2 years, change the brake fluid every 2 years, regardless of miles. Odds are you'll be buying a bike that's more than 2 years old, so assume you will need to do all the basic services. Also assume you'll probably need to replace the tires, the battery, and the brake pads. Factor in your time or the expense of getting all those things taken care of. We want to protect ourselves from getting taken advantage of or ended up with a bike that's nothing but problem. A lot of times buying a used bike from a dealership can reduce some of the risks, but that comes at a cost, meaning a used bike from a dealership is going to be priced a bit higher because it's probably been looked over by the shop mechanic. The transfer of ownership will be a lot easier, and if something catastrophic happens to the motor a week after you buy the bike, there is a business where we can find some resolution. Buying a bike from a random seller will likely have the greatest cost benefit, but we are completely on our own to assess the condition of the bike, but we've got to assess the quality of the seller as well. I pay as much attention to them as I do the bike. Are they honest? Do their stories line up? Is something just off? No matter how badly I may want the bike, if something about the person makes my spidey senses tingle, I run away. Now, this varies widely based on your local laws and regulations, so this is very broad. But the first question we need to ask is if the bike has a clear title, in hand, registered to them. If the bike has a salvage or branded title, or if there is a lien. Is there a loan on the bike and the bank has the title? Or if the title is in someone else's name. Basically, we are looking for legal documentation that proves they are entitled to sell the vehicle. We want the seller to send us a photo of the front and back of the title or proof of ownership, so we can use any number of online free VIN check services where the vehicle is registered to make sure everything checks out. We also need to make sure the legal owner is the person we're meeting. If this can't be verified, then just walk away. It sounds simple, but this kills a lot of deals before they even get started. Finally, we want to ask if the bike has been crashed, why they're selling it, and then ask if all the services have been done. Their answers help us figure out the honesty of the seller and assess the overall condition of the bike. Unless we know exactly what we are looking for, the ideal situation is to have the seller bring the bike to a mechanic we trust so they can look over the bike. An hour of labor can save so many headaches. But realistically, this almost never happens. You'll probably end up driving to the seller's house. When we get the seller's address or whatever location where you're going to see the bike, do some research. Google Earth or Zillow. Make sure the neighborhood looks reasonably safe. Trust those instincts. If anything doesn't feel right, skip out on the deal, find another location, or just drive away. I'm typically going in with cash, so I always park so I can easily leave, and I leave the cash in the car and lock the doors. If things start feeling weird halfway through, I can make an excuse to return to the car and just drive away. I'll bring a small flashlight, a tire pressure gauge, and a basic voltmeter. The first thing we do is cross-reference the VIN from the title with the VIN on the frame and the VIN on the motor. If one of these doesn't match, walk. That's a sign that it's either stolen or salvaged. Look, we are looking at the bike to figure out its history. And again, we are looking for any excuse not to buy it. I like to start with a wide view assessment. What's the overall condition? Is the black plastic turning blue? What do the hand grips look like? Are they new or worn and nasty? What color is the oil, the coolant, the brake fluid? Is the bike clean? Is the paint swirled? Are there cracks in the bodywork or dents in the gas tank? Is it knockoff eBay or original bodywork? If it's eBay bodywork, that is a significant hit to the actual value of the bike. Look for indications of the bike being repainted. Nobody paints a perfectly good bike, and a respray will never be as good as factory paint. Repaints indicate some kind of crash damage. Next, I'll check for tip over damage. Every bike has been dropped. I just want to figure out how bad. So look at the scratches in the bar ends and the ends of the levers. Are they aftermarket levers? Look for the scratches on the tips of the mirrors and the bottoms of the foot pegs and the bottoms of the fork legs. Fork legs almost always hit the ground if the bike falls in motion. Then check the bottoms of the case covers and the bottoms of the exhaust pipe. Get on the ground and look at the bottom of the bike for leaks and cracks, grime, or any other dents or damage. Always check the steering stops on the front of the frame. If these are at all bent or tweaked, then the bike has been crashed. Then walk around to the back of the bike to see if the subframe is twisted or if anything looks out of line. If things are looking good, we can move forward, and if not, get out. Start the bike and then go through every single switch and button. High beam, low beam, turn signals. Make sure all the brake light switches work, the horn. Do the brakes feel firm or squishy? Does the throttle turn easily and snap back? Turn the handlebars full lock left and full lock right to see if the handlebars are bent or if the engine revs. Then turn off the engine with the kill switch and start the bike again. Make sure the side stand kill switch works. Start the bike a third time. 3 starts will typically tell you if the battery is weak. Check if the seller has both keys and make sure they both work, the ignition, the gas cap, and look inside to see if anything funny in there, and then take off the seat. If the keys don't open all the locks, something funky is going on. Put your voltmeter on the battery, but we don't really care what the battery voltage is. This is an excuse to look at the wiring under the seat and to see if anything has been attached to the battery or if things have been altered or spliced in, such as an alarm, lights, speakers, or any other nonsense. With as complex as modern motorcycles are, any alterations to the factory wire loom are a huge red flag. If we've made it this far, then we want to systematically work our way around the bike, starting with the front tire. Now, I always plan on replacing the tires, but tires tell us a lot. Are they matched? How old are they? Does the front tire have uneven wear? Check the tire pressure. If the pressure is really low, it's likely that the rest of the bike has probably also been neglected. Use your little flashlight to look at the brake pads. I expect I'll need to replace them, but how thin are they and how filthy is it down in there? Look closely at the rotors and wheels, feeling for ridges, cracks, gouges, obvious bends, or any discolorations. Run your hands around the perimeter of both wheels, looking for any chunks missing or obvious woogies. Check the fork seals for anything greasy or slimy on the fork tubes. A blown fork seal is fairly common, and I always plan on servicing the forks anyway, but we want to really look at the fork tubes for any pitting or damage. Damage here is extremely costly to repair, and if left alone, the damaged tube will just forever cut your fork seals. Those forks hanging on the wall had to be replaced because of damage to the chrome fork tubes. No, it wasn't cheap. Use your flashlight to look at the header pipes for dents and black soot where they connect to the motor. Long-term exhaust leaks can eventually result in damage to the valves. Shine the light in all the nooks and crannies looking for any fuel, oil, or coolant leaks or evidence of past leaks. We also want to look inside the heads of bolts looking for rust or corrosion. This helps us know if the bike has lived outside. And finally, check the chain and sprockets. Is it rusty or greasy from lots of lube? Are the teeth hooked or pointy? Was the bike cared for and loved, or was it neglected? I don't ask for test rides, nor do I offer them when I'm selling a bike. The liability goes way up. We don't want to crash a bike that we may not actually want. But if we feel like we need a test ride, write out a brief contract for a 20-minute buyback guarantee. Give the seller your cash and they promise to give it back within 20 minutes if the bike comes back in the same condition it left. Personally, I won't bother. If I'm not comfortable with the bike's overall condition at this point, I'll simply walk away. A test ride rarely tells me much more at this point. If we feel good about it, then we negotiate a price, and if everyone agrees, then comes the paperwork. Each state and country has its own rules about this, and it's far too complex to cover in this video, but do your research and find out what has to happen before you even meet the seller. So if I leave you guys with one last bit of advice, know when to walk away. When we add in all the things that likely will need to be replaced and serviced, and then factor in our time that is also valuable, the best decision might be to walk away. That and, okay, two last bits of advice. The other secret to getting a good deal besides doing your homework and looking at all the right things on the bike is to shop in the off season. In the middle of summer, that bike might be worth $5,000, but in the dead of winter, it's only worth $3,500. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Ride on and ride well.